Love is an amazing feeling. It can bring the best out of people, and it can be such a mesmerizing experience to be able to spend time with the person you love. There are so many stories that explore the beauty of love, one of which is a story that we covered last year, that being The Dangers of My Heart. But it can also be quite disastrous and toxic to many individuals. Whether it be dealing with unrequited love, abusive or manipulative love, the list keeps going on. Love can control people for better or worse, and this is a story all about this. It can trap one into toxicity, as shown in Hanabi's classmates who can't let go of their unfaithful boyfriends due to love. Love is complex, and there's nothing you can do about it. It is layered with various elements that define each situation distinctly. A few months ago, we discussed Aka Akasaka and Mango Yokoyari's Oshinoko and how it failed to deliver in its ending and butchered various things about the story. But what if I told you that this story is actually written by the very same artist, Mango Yokoyari? It is a story that is quite difficult to recommend given its structure. The characters are unlikable and scummy, and the themes it explores can come off as uncomfortable to the audience, especially with the abundance of explicit scenes. It is all about the many different facets of love and the loneliness that comes with it. Love controls these people and their actions, but so does their loneliness, as both feelings are intertwined. One of the most important questions in the story, especially for the main protagonist and antagonist, is the value of unrequited love. What purpose does it serve if it is a love that will never come true? Can you truly become a replacement for somebody's cherished one?
報われない恋、切ない恋、片思い、それってそんなに美しいものですか?
The story's most important themes are the intertwining nature of love and loneliness, and Hanabi is the perfect character to represent it. Her character is founded on the concept of how her unrequited love has isolated her to no end. And many of her actions throughout the narrative usually involve easing that solitude, or attempt to find any way to escape these feelings once and for all. While every character in Scum's Wish exhibits many different forms of harmful love, whether it be toxic, lustful, or abusive, Hanabi is one of the only characters who bears an innocent and sweet love. From the beginning, it is quite apparent that her feelings toward Narumi are genuine, and it does not contain a tint of ulterior motives. She wholeheartedly loves and accepts him for who he is, and wants to be with him every step of the way. This is further highlighted in this scene with Hanabi and her classmates. Here, we're shown how her classmates view love, and it is absolutely shallow and riddled with beneficial gain. They're not looking at relationships in a fulfilling manner. Instead, it is scaled in whichever partner is more successful in life, and how they could benefit from those qualities rather than think about the person themselves. Hanabi is baffled at this perspective on love, as it just doesn't make sense to her. Love must be grandiose. For it to be love, it must never be based around ulterior motives. If it were, then it would be nothing but a fallacy. How could it be love when you're only looking to be with the person just to take advantage of their success?
諦めるとか諦めないとかの問題じゃないじゃん。好きになったら、もうその人じゃないとダメで。
Hanabi does seem to be a very romantic person given the fact that she seems to have a very extreme view on her relationships to people. Either you're somebody precious to her or you don't exist. For example, take a look at how she handles confessions by random classmates. They're so unimportant to her that she either forgets it happened or she doesn't remember their names at all. It's why she believes that it is creepy to have somebody you have no interest in chase after you. I think Hanabi views love to be a spectacle, as seen in how Hanabi doesn't seem to have a middle ground when it comes to her relationships to people. It is clear when viewing her dynamic to Mocha, considering she is not close to her at all. She is harsh, rude, and petty when it comes to her, and is constantly rubbing the fact that Mugi chose her and not Mocha in her face. This small interaction is a bit of a foreshadowing of Hanabi's eventual downfall in her attempt to battle against Akane out of pettiness. Hanabi is fixated on loneliness, and she tries everything she can to avoid it because it would be painful. In fact, it is pain itself that Hanabi will do whatever it takes to not experience it, such as her reluctance in piercing her ears since it would be hurtful. It's why she lets Sanae do whatever she pleases to her body. She can't bring herself to hurt her cherished friend, but it is also due to the fact that she needed somebody to be there for her when she felt so isolated. Love in of itself is the root of her loneliness. She strayed further and further away from Narumi as he has gotten more attracted to Akane, and the longer she is in this situation, the worse it will get. It is nothing but a curse. It's why she has stated that she wished to be freed from her feelings, yet despite the fact that she herself believes that love is natural and cannot be controlled, she still desperately clings on to attempting to date Mugi for the sake of replacing Narumi. It goes all the way back to the question Hanabi asks herself from the very beginning. What is the purpose of unrequited love? It is not fun having these feelings that will never be reciprocated. And yet, she does not want to forget this experience even if it is so stressful. And I think this speaks volumes about Hanabi's empathy here. She treasures the mundane and endures the most minuscule of moments if it is with the person she cares for. She does not want to lose Narumi and is willing to play the little sister role if it means being with him. But is that her way to happiness? Will she really be content with bottling everything up and playing this role just so she could stay beside him? Well, to live is to suffer, and Hanabi is aware of this. but it is merely a farce as Hanabi is constantly seen running away from confrontations in the first half of the story. She is unable to confront Narumi about her feelings and is too afraid of hurting her loved ones to the point of taking advantage of them and leaving them without an answer. But it can't be her fault because otherwise it will be a painful realization. And so she creates these excuses about Sanai's feelings where it isn't actually Hanabi's fault things had turned out this way. It was Sanai's for having feelings for Hanabi. They were never friends in the first place. These traits establish a similarity between her and Akane. However, there is one key detail of Hanabi that separates her from Akane, as well as insisting that Hanabi cannot be like Akane. And it is the fact that Hanabi could never detach herself from the people she cares for. While she has shown zero connection to people she barely knows, it is clear as day that what prevents her from defeating Akane in her own game is the fact that she feels too much. If she were to even have a speck of a chance against her, then she must abandon all her principles, think selfishly and superficially, all the while attempting to play a persona to lure people towards her.
人の気持ちをもてあそぶ。案外それはとても気持ちのいいものだったりするのかな。なら、いっそそうだ。あなたに夢中な人たちみんな、私のものにしたい。それで誰が傷ついても？わかってる。自分のことしか考えてないって。でもなんでだろう。止まらないの。あいつに向いてる気持ちが欲しいの。勝ちたいのあいつに。そうしないときっと私このままじゃ空っぽになっちゃうの。気持ちは奪ったり奪われたりするものじゃないよ。ましてやそんなことで満たされるなんて絶対にありえないよ。うるさい、黙ってよ。
Maybe this is fun. Perhaps this is fulfilling. Otherwise, it wouldn't explain how Akane is able to attain everything Hanabi desires. Hanabi knows she'll never be able to defeat Akane, but this scene shows how desperate she is to do it. She tries convincing herself that she is only thinking about herself, but it is impossible because this is Hanabi we're talking about. The Hanabi whose actions have always revolved around her feelings towards others and how much she cares for them. But is that really all there is to it? There's just something interesting about the fact that Hanabi and Akane are so similar in this aspect, yet there are many distinctions that highlight why they could never be the other person. For one, Hanabi will only take advantage of others' feelings to protect herself from loneliness. It may sometimes be a means of running away from problems, as seen how she does not give Sanae an actual answer, and sort of runs away from it by letting her do whatever she wants. But there's just something about that attention you acquire from having somebody be that obsessed about you. That dopamine rush that Akane is constantly seeking with multiple men is something shallow, but perhaps it may be the answer to all of Hanabi's problems. I think what Takia says to Hanabi really is what Akane is all about in this part of the story. As long as something feels good, then what's the issue? Hanabi's date with Takia explores this in detail. It's this that showcases Hanabi's inexperience and naivete when it comes to this kind of thing. But more than that, I think it also shows how despite the fact that she has decided to take this path to defeat Akane, she's unable to sleep with Takia for the sake of it because of how much she cherishes the concept of love, which would likely go as far as sleeping with somebody in this instance. Both Hanabi and Mugi are afraid of acquiring something the other desires. Hanabi is afraid of experiencing shallow pleasure as seen in how she rejects Takia's advances, likely out of not wanting to be superficial in how much she sees herself as that, while Mugi is actually afraid of intimacy itself, which is something we'll discuss further in this video. However, this is a quest to prove her self-worth against Akane. She must break down all her walls if she wants to stand a chance and seduce Takia. But she can't. She just isn't able to belittle these experiences that are supposed to be grandiose. But if she's unable to, then what does this say about Hanabi?
私と違ってあいつは初めから自分の価値が高い位置にあって自尊心が満たされてる。削れることもないんだ。比べて私は他人の評価を通じて自分の自尊心を取り戻そうとしてる。この差は大きい。自分の存在価値を他人に依存するなんて。でもそんなバカみたいな。まるでその人に否定されただけで世界が終わるようなそんな気持ちにさせるのが恋だから。
Her reliance on others to determine her self-worth is exactly her undoing. If that person you cherish most rejects you, then what is there left at that point? It's what makes Akane much stronger than Hanabi in this regard, as she radiates confidence and does not rely on anybody to prove her self-worth, but it is only because nobody has ever rejected her advances. We'll talk about this further in her own section when it comes to her dynamic with Narumi. Hanabi may view herself as opposite to Akane, and while that is true, they share a level of interesting similarities. This experience is too addicting. Perhaps Hanabi was wrong. People who you're not interested in obsessing over you is exciting because it means that you're that important. Maybe this is the right path for her. It is in this fashion that the narrative manages to make you unsure of how Hanabi's story will go. Will she be able to grow and learn from this despair, or will she keep constantly falling to the point of no return? We're shown instances of her falling into this addiction and presenting how much closer she is getting to Akane. Slowly and slowly, she wants Takia to be obsessed about her, regardless of her prior beliefs. She needs to win against Akane and she will try to acquire it by any means necessary. She is getting the attention she wanted and her loneliness is fading away, right? However, there is another fatal flaw, one that Hanabi does not recognize. Lust. Takia was lusting for Hanabi and not admiring her.
恋なんて手に入らなかった。ただの欲だけ。それでも浮かれた。だって今の私にはもう、その違いすらわからないんだもの。執着されたい。夢中にさせたい。私からは何もあげない。何一つ奪わせない。対等じゃないのがいい。誰でもいい。価値があると思わせて。
This is not what Hanabi had been seeking, but it is too late at this point. She just wants to believe that she's worth something, especially after being crushed at the revelation that Akane has slept with Narumi. Akane is so successful in her conquest because they lost for her and nothing else, and is why Mugi was doomed to never be able to be with Akane. But unlike Akane, she just does not find any of this to be fun at all. This can't be the answer because it goes against everything Hanabi has strived for, as it would no longer make her be the person that she had always been. Throughout the series, she's always been someone who is capable of differentiating love and lust, as seen in her feelings towards Narumi in comparison to Mugi's feelings towards Akane. But it's to the point where she cannot form a distinction between the two, and I think that's what makes her confession so powerful. The confession represents Hanabi's growth from this point onward. She may have gotten rejected, but there is strength in her confrontation as she is no longer running away from her problems. She could never surpass Akane in her own game, and there is nothing wrong with that because that way of life is flawed and will never lead to her happiness. And she's always known this since the beginning. This confession also serves to highlight one of the main questions Hanabi asks herself, and it's the purpose of unrequited love. Is it really worth anything if it never comes to fruition? I think to me, seeing Hanabi's character arc, it enforces the notion that there has been meaning in this love. It was not worthless just because it was a failure. Hanabi has managed to grow and develop so much because of this love, as well as have so many memories with Narumi, a childhood friend that she held so dear to her. These feelings can't be meaningless because they are feelings. I absolutely love the fact that Narumi takes her feelings completely seriously and embraces her without uttering many words, likely understanding how much pain Hanabi's been through.
大丈夫。今度こそ前に進むの。きっとできる。きっと変われる。一人じゃないから。
I think what encapsulates Hanabi's character is her scene with Mocha, the character who bears the closest similarities to Hanabi in the story. Being alone does not equate to loneliness, and Mocha is the perfect example. She has always been alone, yet she is strong enough to endlessly chase after Mugi and be able to stand on her own 2 feet. Perhaps one day, Hanabi will be able to find the genuine connection she had been looking for all this time. While Hanabi represents a tragic tale of an affectionate love, Mugi is their direct opposite. He represents the vulgar and ugly nature of lust, one that consumes him to no end, as seen in his feelings towards Akane. If Hanabi's character explores the romantic side of love, then Hanabi explores the lustful side of it. He is similar to Akane in a multitude of ways. For one, they are both portrayed as repulsive and shallow, people that take advantage of the opposite sex for gratification, whether it be a desire for self-validation or simply to feel superior. The difference is that unlike Akane, Mugi hates himself for these tendencies. This is not to imply that Mugi does not care for his female friends, as he definitely cares a lot for Hanabi and Mocha. I think a great way to describe Mugi and Akane is that while Akane presents herself as what society wants women to be, cute, prim, and clumsy, Mugi is the complete opposite. He is exactly what society expects men are like: vulgar, lustful, and are only concerned with sex. He is a manifestation of desire. His relationship to Mocha is interesting because while he does care for her, there is a manipulative layer underneath. One may infer that he's simply not rejecting Mocha's advances because he does not want to crush her dreams, but it is much more than that. One of Mugi's core characteristics is his instinctual desire to feel superior and have control over women, and his date with Mocha shows this in its entirety. Despite being into Akane, he still decides to go on a date with Mocha because he has a soft spot for her. I think it's interesting to note that Mugi in this scene actually kisses Mocha when she confesses to him, once again while crying, because she is throwing all her intimacy and passion onto him, just like what his senpai had done before. Except in this instance, he does not come off as afraid as opposed to what was shown previously. I think it's because this scene highlights one of Mugi's greatest faults, and it's how his lust can take over to him to the point of taking priority over everything. In this moment, he is fully aware of the situation and even admits that he's likely going to hell for everything he's done.
ごめん、汚せないのは自分のため。割り切れないのも自分のため。でも、それでも俺、モカが大切なんだ。それは本当なんだ。
There's just something ironic about the fact that he's obsessed with Akane's abhorrent and scummy personality, while putting Mocha's pure-like facade on a pedestal, enough to not want to sully it for himself. She is a doll that should not be tainted. It is an interesting contradiction, as given the fact that he's been shown to have those thoughts towards Hanabi before, yet he proceeds to put Mocha on a much higher plane that it actually pains her. She does not want to be idolized in this fashion, she simply wants to be with him, which is the direct opposite to Mugi being content with being one of Akane's many men. It further hammers down the point of just how shallow of a man Mugi really is. If Akane and Mugi are similar when it comes to sex, then Mugi and Hanabi are opposites when it comes to love. In Hanabi's case, she desires to have a fulfilling and intimate life with the person she loves. We can see the way she speaks of Narumi shows how much she loves him for who she is, as well as accepting him. Hanabi is serious and seeking a meaningful relationship with the person she loves. Whereas in Mugi's case, he is afraid of intimacy and depth, and this is highlighted in his relationship with his senpai. He is a shallow man who chases after women for satisfaction. While she was serious and passionate about him, he was afraid of her physical advances and couldn't handle the amount of attention that was thrown towards him. Like Hanabi, she despised being alone, but threw those feelings towards Mugi, which terrified him. Both Hanabi and Mugi are terrified of the very thing the other has. Mugi has all the attention Hanabi desires, yet fears all the intimacy that Hanabi is capable of showing towards him. His shallowness is derived from the fact that he is uncomfortable with having something profound. Perhaps he feels as though he is unable to reciprocate that level of affection to somebody if they were to be serious about him, as I do think that Mugi definitely cares for people in general, as we've seen with his senpai for instance. It's just that his sexual nature clashes with this notion. Plus, when you consider the fact that Hanabi only views people as either very close to her or they don't exist, I think Mugi's in the middle. This all goes back to Akane, as when you really analyze the way Mugi feels about her in contrast to how Hanabi feels about Narumi, it comes off as nothing but lust for Akane, just like the many men in her life. While Mugi is aware of Akane's facade, he deliberately ignores it. He has been endlessly warned to not associate with her, and yet, he still latches onto her. We've been shown multiple characters in the story whose feelings cause them to turn a blind eye to unfaithfulness. It is another side to love, whether it be forcing herself to accept an abusive toxic relationship in the case of Akane, or having to bottle those feelings up for so long that it is unbearable in the case of Hanabi. You just want to treasure that person, but it sometimes just isn't worth it, as it can lead to disasters. It's sad, despite the fact that Akane is constantly fooling around with men, Mugi is aware of this, knowing full well that he will never be able to genuinely be with her, and yet still latches on. But, if Akane is constantly relying on men to satisfy her needs, then she is helpless and weak, right? So if Mugi were able to tag along as one of those men, then he would be superior to her, right? Just like what he's expressed towards Hanabi when things are going terribly for her, Mugi relished in her weaknesses and yearned to taint that innocence of hers, but he could never actually go forth with it due to how much he cares for her, as well as the promises they've made together. This is just an interpretation, but I do get the impression that Mugi's tendency to want to be superior to men may be derived from his self-hatred, as he lacks any ambitions or passions to do anything in life. So the way he subconsciously wants to feel above others may be a means to cope with that part of himself that he despises so much.
怯えてるのに怖いのにまっすぐにじっと俺を見てる綺麗な人だなめちゃくちゃにドロドロに汚したい俺は男だからそういうもんだって分かってたってやるせなく悲しい
While Hanabi and Mugi's dynamic initiates from ulterior motives, the story constantly challenges their feelings. Is it really such a fake relationship, or is there more to it? Throughout the story, many different instances tackle this question. The most prominent one being early into the story, where both characters attempt to envision their love by using the other person as a vehicle for them while being intimate. It feels fulfilling for both of them until eventually it doesn't. Strangely enough, they just seemingly stop this at some point without realizing it. Even Hanabi herself says it here that she wondered if this means that a part of her has started desiring Mugi himself rather than Narumi. I think this is also a way to highlight Hanabi's desperate attempt to escape her crush. We've seen how much it torments her, and even she wants to be freed from it. Hence why later into the series she is trying her hardest to get Mugi to sleep with her, potentially because she thinks that this will be the answer to move on from Narumi. But it never could be. It's interesting because Hanabi believes that sleeping with Mugi and trying to unnaturally fall in love with him in hopes of replacing her doomed love is in complete opposition to Mugi's belief in latching onto Akane and sleeping with her will lead to happiness. It's these things that really hammer down the idea that these two are made for each other, as each one has things the other lacks, showcasing that if they were able to get past their inherent flaws and be able to truly be together, then that may be their answer. This is essentially one of the main components of Mugi's developments. The confession is what is basically the most important moment for Hanabi, whereas it is Mugi's worst nightmare. One may point out that Hanabi gets rejected by Narumi while Mugi gets accepted, but this is by no means a win for Mugi. While Hanabi is able to find strength in moving forward alone and moving on from her first crush, Mugi is chained to his desires more and more thanks to this confession. This is highlighted in how their crushes respond to their feelings. In Narumi's case, he takes it seriously, fully accounting for Hanabi's feelings. He may be dense, but he does not treat it as some sort of joke, and does not say a word while embracing her. He realizes how painful this is for Hanabi, and understands it wholeheartedly. It is an emotional moment for the two of them, and it is a perfect conclusion for this stage in Hanabi's life. However, in Mugi's case, it is a destructive, ugly, and manipulative moment. Here, rather than being a heartful confession, it is a psychological warfare between these two, as Akane is just trying to manipulate Mugi by utilizing his confession to her own benefit by superficially confessing to him. Fully aware that he will give in regardless of whether or not he knows that he's being played. Everything she says is a lie, but does it really matter for Mugi? Mugi tries to move on from Akane, but he is unable to as the person in front of him is trying to tie him to the love that stopped him from ever growing. He is too enamored.
おい、ダメだって。引けよもう。踏み込むな、俺のバカ。その人は絶対に手に入らないんだ。だから好きだったんだ。手に入らないから好きだったんだ。
Whenever he expressed feelings of hatred towards himself, he always envisions Hanabi, whether it be her telling him what he needs to hear, or remembering the promise he's made to himself that he will not let her feel lonely anymore. For instance, in this scene he laments relapsing with Akane, and in this moment he envisions multiple girls, and he only speaks of Hanabi's expressions, not anybody else. I think these moments insinuate not only Mugi's growing affection towards Hanabi, but also him understanding that Hanabi may be the right answer for him if he wants to change. It isn't Akane. This is further supported in this scene where it is Hanabi who tells him that if he wants to try changing Akane, then he needs to change himself first. But would that really be the Akane that he is attracted to?
俺はずっと覚えています。どんなに茜さんが忘れてほしくても絶対俺はずっとあなたを変えたいと思ってた。でもそんなの間違いだったんだ。変わってしまう前のあなたが俺は好きだったから。だから俺は忘れません。
I think there are two aspects of Mugi that make him so special in the story. The first being that while everybody's arc centers around their love for somebody, whether it be Hanabi's innocent love for Narumi, Sanai's possessive and destructive love for Hanabi, and many alike, Mugi's the one character whose arc centers on his lust for somebody. He seems to be unable to differentiate between love and lust, and I think this is what his dynamic with Hanabi represents. While one may argue that Akane's character explores similar topics, it isn't really that similar as she does not actually pursue love throughout most of the story. She instead treats all these kinds of feelings the story explores as some sort of entertainment for her and uses it to her advantage. The second aspect is that Mugi is an interesting take on character growth. Most stories explore the journey of a character who wants to change for the better, and showcase how they've managed to develop from point A to B in their lives. But not many stories actually tackle the hardships of committing to said growth, as there are various difficulties that come with growth, whether it be the difficulty of letting go of the things that cause your misery, or how arduous the journey can be to actually change, until it feels too pressuring and eventually you relapse. Change is scary, and Mugi's character encompasses this. He is constantly seen relapsing with Akane despite the fact that he wants to change and let go of her, but he just can't. He can't help himself play the experiences he's had with her endlessly in his mind.
そんな自分を完全に切り離して新しく真っ当に生きていく決意さえままならない自分。なんだかんだそんな自分に愛着があるから変わるのが怖くて怖くて怖くて怖くて怖くてたまらないから。それでもそんなこと全部構わないと愛してくれた人がいた。そんな俺は変わるべきなんだ、絶対に。
I think that's what's so significant about his relationship with Hanabi, because her impact on Mugi is what helps him in the two most important facets of his character, his clash of love and lust, as well as his inability to grow. In this case, we're shown just how Hanabi's influence and her presence in Mugi's life is what has made him start to realize that he must grow and change, which is further highlighted in the epilogue. In his epilogue chapter, he is the only character among the cast that has not been able to move on and become stronger. He is leeching off various women and constantly being drunk, aimlessly going about life. Everyone has gotten stronger, but he's stuck in place after his heartbreak. He truly has nothing going on in his life. The women he spends time with are nothing but shallow lust, and nothing serious. He's slowly trying, as seen in how he actually tries getting a job once he gets kicked out of his friend's house, but it isn't enough. This is where Hanabi comes into play, where once again, she is the person he envisions telling him that he's lied about the promise of committing a change. He is weak, stuck in place and constantly doing the same thing over and over again. This superficial pleasure will do him no good, and he needs to chase after something he's passionate about, and that is Hanabi herself. However, he cannot pursue her the way he is because that would be going back right into square one, and he wouldn't be an equal to her given his situation. He's filled with nothing but regrets of their high school days. Maybe he should have done something differently. But nobody could ever deny what these two have experienced together. It cannot be fake because of how many times he's constantly thought of Hanabi. It just can't. It may have started out of ulterior motives. We've been shown signs of their sincerity to one another. After all, they've always been around each other since the start of their relationship, and I think in this instance is when Mugi finally understands what love really is all about. Commitment and passion. He hasn't been able to dedicate himself to Hanabi and has left her all alone while pursuing Akane, a personification of everything he should avoid being, and decides to look for Hanabi while finally embracing the mistakes he's done. I think Mugi was drawn to Hanabi's ability to pursue the unknown and be able to grow. Leaving the comfort zone is terrifying, and Mugi has shown this so many times throughout the narrative, but Hanabi's influence has likely assisted him in learning the importance of a goal in life. There is a quote that Mugi says in the story, and I think it really reflects how his character has been throughout it, and it's the idea that feelings not play a part in a male's sexual desires, and I really think this encapsulates Mugi's arc. What he feels for Akane is not love, because it is not Akane herself that he thought he was in love with. It is what she presented herself to be that caused him to lust for her. His lustful nature is what was drawn to her as opposed to the way he realizes his feelings for Hanabi. He is an essential component to the story, as I would argue he stands out the most out of all of the characters in the narrative for being the only one who explores the hardships of growth as well as learning the value and meaning of love in a way that is quite different from everybody in the story. There is a character who is the cause of everything in the story, and it is one I've been alluding to throughout Hanabi and Mugi's segments as she heavily impacts both of their characters, as well as highlighting various traits of them. Her presence in the narrative adds various layers to many of the overarching themes in the story, as well as providing a different perspective to the spectrum of love and loneliness. She is the one who views all these characters' stories and watches them from afar, as if they solely exist for her entertainment. To her, there is nothing special about love and merely utilizes it for her own benefit and selfish desire to validate her own existence, as she herself could never fathom the intricacies of those feelings. Of course, we're talking about Akane Minagawa. While Hanabi explores expressing the beauty of love and having her philosophies on love get challenged in various ways to really highlight just what it is that Hanabi values so much about love, Akane is the direct opposite. Instead, her character establishes the ugliness of lust and utilizes it to her own benefit, whether it be completely abusing Mugi mentally for her own validation, or simply sleeping with men just to feel the thrill of desire. An important detail in Akane's character arc is also realizing the beauty of love itself, as she is someone who does not fathom it. If she cannot ever love somebody, then why should anybody else get that luxury?
羨ましいのよ。自分以外の誰かを好きになるなんて、私にはありえないから。
Akane's characterization opposes Hanabi and Mugi in almost every step of the way, and it serves to further emphasize on both the protagonist characters. She is a perfect parallel that represents everything that both of them must avoid. Mugi must differentiate love and lust, or else he will forever keep falling into the pits of hatred and depression by the likes of Akane, and will never be able to form a genuine connection with anybody. Hanabi must solidify her beliefs on love and ensure that she should never stray away from what she truly is all about, which is what her gradual descent was there for. Akane is the jester of this story, but rather than the typical jester who simply steers the pot for the sake of getting to witness people's reactions and actions, Akane instead simply does the things she does out of a need to be validated and desired. The only character that caused her to fit the mold of jester is none other than Hanabi, as she is the only person that Hanabi seems to despise, and yearns to do everything in her power to make her suffer and relish in anticipation over the many despaired faces that Hanabi might make. And this is because Hanabi has everything that Akane will never be able to experience. Hanabi is the perfect character for Akane to loathe, as Hanabi is the most affectionate and caring character in the story. She is somebody who wholeheartedly believes in true love and is capable of loving somebody while being devoid of ulterior motives. She values it tremendously and despises the way Akane would express her shallow love. It can't be love if she is simply using it for self-interest. It's intriguing because while Akane serves to be the person Hanabi must never become, Hanabi serves to be the person that Akane should strive to be like, and that's exactly what the base of her character arc is. Learning the radiance of love itself and the many different kinds of love, most notably the unconditional kind in this case. It's exactly why the story has both characters slowly develop into the other and realize why it may either be flawed or correct respectively. Perhaps a part of Akane was simply interested in tormenting Hanabi out of boredom, as this is another aspect of Akane that defines her character. The way she approaches Hanabi is unlike any other in the story, as it is much more hostile and is one of the only cases where Akane fully acts like a jester. For example, she sets things up so that Hanabi would manage to witness Narumi's confession to her in order to enact full pain and misery on Hanabi. Akane is simply suffering from boredom, and it is another reason why she is the way she is. Along with her desire for attention whichever way she receives it, all the roles she plays are simply a means to entertain herself, whether it be the teacher, the clumsy woman who swims over men, and many alike. She shackles herself into these roles and is chained to a monotonous lifestyle. Just a quick reminder to let you all know that if you've been enjoying the content, to be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Back to the video. It is the only way she knows how to live life and be validated by any means necessary, and it is highlighted in many instances throughout the narrative. What makes things more compelling is that with this in mind, Akane actually embraces loneliness and wears it on her sleeve. She will never love anybody, and she fully indulges in herself, and unlike Mugi, she loves every part of her existence. Being a prisoner to boredom can be horrifying and lead to devastating results. This is something from another series, but it is still fitting for Akane. And it's something that Izaya Orihara from Durara tells Mikado Ryugamine, and it is the idea that if he truly wishes to escape the mundane, then he must keep constantly evolving, because eventually, what was once thrilling will become the norm, and so the desire to seek the abnormal will resurface, rinse and repeat. And I think Akane is exactly like this, and it is shown in her actions in middle school. Akane had a close friend in Mio, who had once told her about her crush. However, rather than pray for her happiness, there was something within Akane that disgusted her at the thought of others being happy and in love. Why should they enjoy it when she could never? Why not destroy it? Saito was merely a test, to see what would happen if she were to make advances on him and cause a rift between him and Mio, and it was fun. It is essential to mention that Akane does not care about Saito himself. It was never about whether or not she could end up with him. It was just that Mio's feelings intrigued Akane. Why does she like him? What kind of person is he? How could Akane influence it? This is just my interpretation of it, but perhaps this can also be seen as a means of Akane trying to actually understand love. Given her jealousy, it wouldn't be a stretch to claim that part of her is trying to comprehend it while also enjoying the torment she causes others along the way. It is essentially her playground after all.
その時、私の中に生まれた感情は罪悪感じゃなかった。薄っぺらい優越感でもなかった。こんな風に搾取される側には死んでも回りたくないってこと。
I think another aspect of Akane's actions is that for her to be immersed in it, someone must suffer, or else it is boring. Take a look at how she reacts when Takia reveals that he already dumped his girlfriend. She immediately loses interest because there is no longer enjoyment to derive from it. Where's the fun in sleeping with him if there is no woman to make jealous? It's these two characteristics that are the core foundation of Akane: boredom and jealousy. Perhaps a part of her wanted to experience normalcy because it may be fun and could cure her boredom. She is aware that she is not normal and that she is messed up in the head, but she knows no other ways to live life. It's why she was so bewildered when Narumi was rejecting her advances and showed her unconditional love, because it was almost as if her entire existence was being rejected, and that is horrific.
キラキラ、いろんな人の思い、気持ち、欲望、いっぱいその色を集めて境界線をなくしたい。
She is a master at manipulating people and perfectly playing all these different characters to entice others. Most notably is her outward personality, which is that of a clumsy, airheaded, and cutesy woman that she presents to the school and is shown in her interactions with Narumi. And yet, she is narcissistic, egotistical, and sadistic. She will say things that people want to hear, such as the case when she tells Muki that she likes him, even though he is fully aware that she is never being genuine with him. But even so, she is still able to have him in the palm of her hands. To Akane, men enjoy this, and so she understands what she can do specifically to have them under her control, and Mugi was no exception. For instance, even when she is on the train, she still attempts to seduce men just to get a look at their flustered faces and feel the dopamine rush of being desired by people. As we've discussed in Hanabi's segment, she ends up pursuing Akane's lifestyle in retaliation for everything she's done to her, and so she tries becoming more shallow, manipulative, and tries to take advantage of men, as seen in the case of Takia. Like Akane with her jealousy and others due to her lack of compassion, Hanabi is vengeful towards Akane for her actions, and throughout this experience realizes the flaws that come along with it, as Hanabi could never become so disassociated towards people and treat them like toys, nor can she throw away her chastity given how she puts love on a pedestal. In Akane's case, her growth towards becoming more like Hanabi is treated in a positive manner, and it is because of her dynamic with Narumi. She's already dealt with various men chasing after her, but never has she dealt with somebody loving her unconditionally and truly accepting her for who she is, despite her horrific tendencies. It is ironic, as Narumi was someone she wrote off as uninteresting given how normal he was, but it was only until Narumi accidentally calls her Hanabi is when she starts finding interest in manipulating him, which does actually work on their first date. How poetic is it that the most normal character of the series was the person who changed Akane permanently? He might not be a focal point in the story, but he is essential to both Hanabi and Akane, as he is the character who manages to accept them for who they are, especially considering Hanabi's confession as discussed earlier. It doesn't make sense. How could a man like Narumi accept the way she is so unfaithful? It is both confusing and aggravating to her, because it is essentially her entire existence being rejected.
女の子なら憧れちゃうような、どんなに羨んでも手に入らないものを、それをいっぱい敷き詰めて、並べて飾ってうっとり眺めて、もてあそんで踏みにじって気まぐれに扱いたい。だってそれしか知らないの、自分が。
For her entire life, she always had it easy with men. They were all in the palm of her hand. She loves nobody, and this is the only way she could feel worthy of anything. She may embrace loneliness, but she is not strong at all. Originally, Hanabi describes Akane as a woman who flaunts her sense of self-worth and radiates charisma that causes others to be drawn towards her. While this notion isn't wrong, Akane establishes her self-worth in the same fashion as Hanabi, but instead of relying on others' love, it is reliant on others' lust. Throughout her dates with Narumi, she is doing everything she can to stick to the role she's put herself into. She has to, or she will be worthless. If this is the only lifestyle she's ever known and it gets rejected by Narumi, then what is left of Akane Minagawa? With how far she's willing to go to want to have Narumi reject her lifestyle, it does show that she wants to be freed from it entirely, especially when considering that she has always been living in conjunction with what society expects of women. She must play these roles or society will reject her and nobody will pay any mind to her. I think this is what separates Narumi and Mugi, as Mugi was someone who ironically loved the Akane who embraced loneliness and treated feelings as nothing but amusement. He was offering Akane the feelings of desire that she yearned for, which is why the moment she would be confused with Narumi, she immediately went to Mugi to vent her frustrations. But not only that, Mugi became the perfect toy to manipulate and play around with as he was actively deluding himself into the illusions that Akane was showing him. In addition, given the fact that Akane describes herself to have a primitive desire for men, she likely views them to be the same as her, as seen in how she thinks that men want to be strung along in the ways that she manipulates them. So when Narumi contradicts the belief, it confuses her to no end. She's had it easy with men her entire life, yet this man she once deemed as mundane was rejecting everything she's ever lived for, looked past it, and simply wanted to have a normal date. The narrative forces Akane to have her entire core challenged in a similar way than Hanabi. While Hanabi learns the value of unrequited love through her confession to Narumi as well as realizing her growth throughout the story, Akane learns the value of it by receiving that unrequited love itself. This is all a first for her, as she is neither in control nor is capable of deducing Narumi's actions. I think in her eyes, the concept of loving somebody that isn't yourself is incomprehensible. It is directly in opposition to Hanabi's belief in love. It must never include ulterior motives to be in love. However, to Akane, men must have ulterior motives for hanging out with her. They must be doing so just to sleep with her, and Narumi completely goes against this. And for the first time ever, she is pursuing somebody to the point where she is frustrated over others bad-mouthing Narumi. Deep down, she always wanted to experience a connection, whether it be out of boredom or simply because humans in general yearn for that social interaction, as nobody can truly live life purely isolated. It is like she is subconsciously clinging to a glimmer of hope to be noticed and loved for who she is, and this is shown in her monologue when she is with Mugi with how she is unable to let go of Narumi. The love of isolation has been slowly fading away and she had gotten attached to somebody for once in her life, and even when trying to stray away from Narumi, her expressions are that of disappointment or sadness in contrast to her reactions when turning other people down. It is usually much more enthralling to her, yet here it is like she is forcing herself to stick to this role that she desperately wants to be freed from. Exactly just like Hanabi when she tried to delude herself into thinking that Akane's lifestyle was something she was capable of and the right mindset. What I find interesting about Akane in this section of the story is that she believes that she can never be cut for a relationship due to her lack of understanding of boundaries. When exactly does something become special? How does somebody become cherished? This could not have been a more fitting theme to explore with Akane, the character who is devoid of any special feelings for anything and simply lives life hedonistically. Especially when considered that Hanabi had always been the character to understand love best in the story aside from the unrequited kind. Akane ends up understanding love through the one love that Hanabi has never understood. It is why she never comprehended why her partners or fears over her, because being faithful does not exist within Akane. She just loves being pampered by men too much and cannot help it, and this is shared with Mugi. Both of these characters are terrified of commitment, yet love casual hookups for the sake of it. But the Akane at this point is not capable of ever being attached to somebody, because if you love yourself, what else do you really need? I think part of Akane has always yearned for relationships, as seen in the very beginning of the story, where she shows jealousy in the people who are capable of having connections and relationships, and is one of the baselines to her actions, especially towards Hanabi. No matter who anybody is, they desire companionship in some shape or form, and Akane is no exception. Perhaps there is no purpose in putting up facades in front of Narumi, but it is due to that causes her to be lost and confused about her feelings towards Narumi, given the affection that he's giving her. Akane has never dropped her personas, not even in front of Mugi, so it is quite a big deal that she actually does this, but it doesn't immediately work. As seen in Mugi's character arc, change is difficult, and here Akane still insists on sticking to her own tendencies by attempting to do whatever it takes to seduce Narumi just so she could validate herself, but she still doesn't succeed and she never will. Narumi is seriously committed to Akane. It is this trait of his that separates him from Mugi and explains why Mugi could never be able to change Akane, and it is the fact that Mugi had ulterior motives, which were simply the gratification of being the first person to change her. But unlike Narumi, it is nothing but shallow. In fact, Narumi does not intend to change Akane. He simply embraces her for who she is and loves her that way, which is arguably similar to Mugi. But unlike Mugi, Narumi does not chase after her superficially. Love can change people, and Akane was able to due to that. What was once an idealization of Akane due to memories of his mother became feelings of compassion and acceptance for who she is, even if she was such a terrible human being.
どうしていつまでも同じことばかり繰り返すの？だってこれしか知らないの。自分が今日も明日もその先もずっと一人でちゃんと立っていられる方法。
If we inspect Hanabi's character and factor in the notion that she and Akane are polar opposites, it isn't a stretch to assume that Akane likely believes that relying on others is weak. This is also supported in how she despises being taken advantage of, which is why she may also do the things she does, to be strong and ensure control so that she could never be hurt. It's this relationship that Akane has with Narumi that answers Hanabi's question regarding unconditional love and its purpose. Both of these two characters have grown immensely due to it, but in Akane's case, it is because somebody else has shown her how special unconditional love can be, and it may have been the very thing she had always needed. For once, she slept with somebody not out of her usual desperate need for validation, but it was a genuine connection with someone. Throughout this dynamic, it tells Akane that change can happen, and part of this notion is also derived from her interest in the abnormal, as she had also always been tormented by boredom, which is why she plays all these different roles. But what's interesting about these roles is that Akane could care less about them. They are nothing but roleplay in a way to pass time, as this is not the way she wants to be remembered. Why would she want to be remembered as nothing but a teacher by her students decades later? She wants to be remembered as Akane Minagawa.
私ね、最後は誰の記憶にも残らず死にたいの。先生になればみんなの記憶の中ではずっと先生だもん。
先生、女、年上。役割を貸したがるのは退屈なその場所で、本当は誰よりも切実に自由を願ってるんじゃないのか。
It's Narumi who manages to free her from these roles, even if she claims that she'll still be willing to stick to them after marriage. Trying new things out means freedom, as you have the opportunity to do endless activities, which includes marriage in this case. The epilogue does give a glimpse of Akane's development after marriage, as her character arc is not fully over yet. While she has decided to change, what now? How does she exactly change, and what will change? She only raised the bar for other men rather than completely quitting it, but that in of itself is proof of growth. It is this that highlights that she is slowly understanding the meaning of value more and starting to treasure her relationship with Narumi, as well as herself. Throughout the narrative, she just slept with anybody and filled that empty hole in her chest, but it was never fulfilling as it could have been anybody. The person was not special. However, this experience shows Akane the brilliance of what is special and meaningful to people, which is having somebody that loves and accepts her for who she is. She can finally rest easy and live a happy life with the man she grew to love, and as seen in the final chapters of the epilogue, they even have a child to take care of now. She might not admit it, but she has been unable to cheat on Narumi at this point, and it just has slowly faded away completely, and that's the beauty of it all. There was meaning in that unconditional love, both to Akane and to Hanabi. While Hanabi learns the value of the genuine connections she's had with Mugi despite it starting superficially, as well as realizing the impact that unconditional love has had on her, Akane's character explores searching for that meaning in of itself and figuring out what really makes love as special as it is to people. Noriko Kamo Meibeta, or more commonly known as Mocha, is another essential character in Scum's Wish. Both she and Sanai offer a perspective that isn't seen in the other members of the cast, and it is the fact that both of them challenge the very nature of Hanabi and Mugi's dynamic and the idea of the special somebody. Mocha is really intriguing because while Akane opposed all the characters' traits and shares similarities within those oppositions, Mocha is the complete opposite. She has a mix of characteristics that are seen in Hanabi, Mugi, and Akane, but her characterization regarding those traits differs immensely. She is essentially a mix between Akane and Hanabi. She harbors Hanabi's romanticization of love, and Akane's manipulative tendencies with how she is capable of tricking others into thinking she is a cute and frail girl to get what she wants. Starting off with the most prominent trait of Mocha, her exploration of love. It is similar to Hanabi on a surface level, as both characters do treasure the idea of love on a fundamental level. However, Mocha's character focuses much more on the person themselves rather than love. What I mean by this is the concept of the special somebody, the fated one. It's this aspect of Mocha that serves to question the very nature of Hanabi and Mugi's relationship. Similarly to Hanabi's philosophy on love having to be grandiose and devoid of ulterior motives, Mocha's view is that love must be with someone special, otherwise it cannot be love. However, it is arguable that Mocha may view love on a much higher scale than Hanabi, as she had always envisioned this fairy tale of her and Mugi being the prince and princess who will be together for all of eternity, and is constantly seen wearing cute and frilly outfits, which are essentially a barrier to protect herself. It's very likely as to why she values speciality so much, given how high she views love. If something is special, then how can it be replaced? However, in the event that replacements can be practical, then why couldn't Mugi just choose Mocha as a replacement for Akane? This is another trait that separates her from Hanabi, and it is the fact that she's willing to go whatever lengths necessary if it means being with Mugi, however minuscule it may be. This further supports the notion of Mocha valuing herself immensely, as she believes that she deserves the happiness for herself, as opposed to the many characters who despise their natures as seen in the likes of Mugi and Hanabi. This also does open an intriguing difference between her and Akane, as the two of them both love themselves with all their beings and both prioritize their own desires above all else. However, in Akane's case, she is simply incapable of ever loving anybody else, and that love for herself is nothing more than a narcissistic desire to be entitled to anything. But Akane did not value herself at all. She relied on other people to validate herself and her self-worth, which is what caused her to be such a weak and fragile woman in the face of Mugi. However, in Mocha's case, her love for herself is due to the immense value she has for people in general. Everybody is special and you must treat yourself with a high level of care, and it's exactly why Mocha is one of the strongest characters in the series. She is confident in what she desires, and despite being alone, she does not seem to suffer from loneliness. She is the only character in the narrative to have this trait positively. She's perfectly content with simply creating an idealized world with Mugi in her mind so that she could just endlessly experience it in her head.
あんな女絶対麦が本命じゃないわよ。麦があいつのことそれでもいいくらい好きならそれなら諦めた。でも違うんだもん。じゃあなんで私じゃダメなの？
But Mocha is not a homewrecker, as this is important how she states that she was willing to give up on him if she deemed his relationship to Hanabi genuine, which further supports her view on speciality. She likely respects those emotions and feelings too well to actually go out of her way to tarnish relationships for her own sake. But considering the fact that the way their relationship is structured, it is merely an insult to Mocha's feelings, as it goes against the very nature of being special to somebody. They are merely using each other as substitutes for somebody else, and that can't be right. Moreover, one may insinuate that this may lead to Mocha's character being too reliant on Mugi, as she is constantly chasing after him. Similarly, the various characters whose role diminishes into being nothing but a love interest whose personality is solely tied to their feelings, but this is far from the case. Mocha's actions are for her own satisfaction, and this all relates to her philosophy on being special. It's quite a unique take on the trope Mocha's character is based on, and prevents her from having her entire characterization be solely reliant on Mugi. Not to mention, she is not some detached individual like Akane. In fact, one may argue that she cares about people the most among the entire cast. This has been shown in various scenes. For one, Mocha is regretful over the boy she went out on a date with, due to her mind venturing off to Mugi to a point where she does not remember his name, and apologizes for what she had done because she realizes how awful it is to trample on one's feelings that way. It's why even when confessed to, she thanks the people who confess to her and treats them with respect because she understands how they feel. This is completely different from the way Hanabi treats confessions, where she just is disconnected from everybody she doesn't deem close to her, and shrugs off whatever feelings that get thrown her way, as if she erases their existence in her memory. However, despite this, Mocha is willing to throw everything away for the sake of her own love. While Hanabi does actually attempt to throw everything away to get revenge on Akane, she could never go against her own beliefs on love and was unable to go with Takiya's advances because of how much she treats love. But with Mocha, she actually has this clash within her between the side that plays the pretty princess and the side that desperately yearns for her own happiness. It is this clash within her between her real self and the version of her that she has created as a barrier, where one wants to make Mugi hers in traditional ways of affection, and the other who couldn't care less anymore because the desire to be with Mugi is just too strong. It is actually a perfect blend of Hanabi and Mugi. She deserves that happiness, so how could she just let it go?
じゃあ叶わない恋は不幸なだけなの？そんなことない。叶わなくたって恋はそんなの嘘よ。ハッピーエンドじゃないなら消えたっていい。
It's why she is content with sleeping with Mugi despite being fully aware that he will likely not return her feelings. He called her cute, held her hand, and looked back at her, and perhaps this is all enough. In that moment, he was all hers, and maybe that is the most important thing. But there is one thing to consider. If Mocha keeps this farce up, then does that not mean that she is simply diminishing the value of the special someone? When accounting for the length she's willing to go for Mugi, she is fine with even the most superficial of things just to be with him, with that being desperately wanting to touch him and sleeping with him despite them not being together, thereby going against what may be considered as special. It's this clash between sincerity and happiness within Mocha that really paints her in an interesting light, because it is something that isn't seen in a character like Hanabi or Akane and really manages to highlight a different perspective on unrequited love. Mocha plays an ideal, but unlike Akane, it is not for the sake of everyone around her, nor is it out of wanting to be freed from what society expects of her. Rather, she simply yearns to indulge in this fantasy that she has created for herself. One where she is this elegant and beautiful princess, wearing the best frilly outfits that she adores. It is all for the sake of her prince Mugi so that they could have the perfect relationship. Like Hanabi, Mocha does explore unrequited love as she's in a similar predicament when it comes to Mugi. Except, her answer to this is much more tragic as opposed to Akane and Hanabi. Instead of attempting to either face or reject its value, she prefers deluding herself in a world that she has created, which adds to the irony for Mocha as she has been one to be direct and facing things head on, as seen in how she is with Mugi and how frequent she is to proclaim her feelings to him. Yet, when yearning for love, she's willing to go against everything just so she can get a taste of it. Essentially, almost every character in the story experiences this notion, yet Mocha is the only one who is fully okay with even having a scrap of it. This is not to confuse it with the way Mugi approached Akane though, as in this case, Mocha does actually yearn for love rather than lust as seen in her monologue where she proclaims that she wants to touch him in that very moment. Like Mugi, she actively wants to live in delusions and that's how she perceived their date with Mugi. Is there any purpose in waking up from her dream if this is such a perfect world? It is in complete opposition to Mugi endlessly replaying Akane's experiences, as that is something that he does not want to do, yet he cannot help it due to the pleasure it ensues. It prevents him from changing and renders him unable to let go of her. More importantly, Mocha tries all she can to ensure that Mugi is satisfied and had fun during this date and still attempts to keep up the farce. She must show that she is happy. She must smile and pray that Mugi is happy. However, delusions are merely delusions and this can be seen in Mugi's lack of satisfaction during the date, and it is due to her lack of sincerity. You cannot lie to yourself forever, and Mocha is one of the only characters where one of her core characteristics is how true she is to herself, which is why she is quickly unable to forcefully smile and convince herself that memories are all she needs. It is almost like she and Hanabi are unable to force themselves to be something they aren't. Hanabi cannot force herself to throw away her notion of love and treat it like it's nothing special, while Mocha cannot bring herself to lie and pretend that everything is okay. It's akin to Hanabi's arc of attempting to be something she isn't and realizing that this was a flawed mentality. Whereas in Mocha's case, it isn't a case of whether it is right or wrong, rather it is what she herself desires most.
私はもっとまっすぐに麦を好きなはずでしょ。仮にも人の彼氏なんだよ。それ以上は良くないよ。でもこれが本当の私を知ってしまったの。それじゃあ適当な恋愛してる奴らと変わらないじゃない。本当に好きだからこそ踏みとどまるべきよ。あのね、違うの。何も知らなかったのは私の方なの。ちゃんと振り向かせてからじゃないと半端な感じで終わっちゃうよ。それでもいいの？今触れたいの。
It is quite ironic for Mugi to feel this way, as he is fully attracted to Akane's insincere and superficial nature, yet he feels much more satisfied when Mocha is at her genuine self rather than the princess-like attitude that she presents. But what happens when Mocha is shown what Mugi perceives as special?
麦の中で私は十分特別よ。特別で不可侵な触れない飾り物よ。私は触れて欲しかった。めちゃくちゃになったっていい。汚れたっていいから麦と同じ世界に行きたかっただけよ。それが叶わないならそんな特別なんて。
This is exactly the moment where the story challenges Mocha's philosophies on what is special, as Mugi's views on it is hollow and nothing else. It really shows a different side to the topic of being special, as what is its purpose if it doesn't go anywhere? It is not like she tries to destroy Mugi's relationships in ways Akane attempts with various men. She simply wanted to live in the same realm as Mugi and not be treated as some doll. She is essentially experiencing what Mugi has gone through with Akane, and it is extremely tragic. It contextualizes why Mocha is completely okay with ruining her nature, as she would much rather be happy than be special. And I think that in of itself encapsulates just how much Mocha treasures herself. Her happiness is much more important than being special to somebody. She tackles Hanabi's question on unrequited love in a different way. She wants to be on equal footing. Her feelings were all that kept her going, and it was her most cherished love. Both Hanabi and Akane managed to grow throughout their experiences of unrequited love, but Mocha only grows after realizing the futility of her feelings towards Mugi. But Mocha is not broken, as we've seen a multitude of times that she is strong, as seen in her conversation with Hanabi, as Mocha actually embraces that independence and being alone to highlight that it does not always equate to loneliness, if you have the strength to pursue that path to acquire what it is that you want so much.
この世界でたった一人きりになった気がして、ただ立ち尽くしてた。どうしてだろう。一人で歩き出すことなんて考えもしなかったの。おかしいよね。
Every character's epilogue in Scum's Wish except Mugi focuses on the aftermath of their growth, essentially highlighting where they are going from here on out. In Mocha's case, it further explores the traits that she has exhibited in the main story. She still currently wears Lolita outfits as armor, but she is finally embracing her honesty and her true self, waiting for the right moment to fall in love again. It sets her apart from the many lies the other characters face off against. This can be seen in how she attends the mixer in her Lolita outfit, showing that she is not afraid of others' opinions to judge her fashion choice at such an event. And it brings out a scene that encapsulates Mocha's character to its fullest. It may have taken long, but she is finally in the world she loves and is passionate about, and it is emphasized in her last conversation with Hanabi, since Hanabi was lost with what path she should take. In Mocha's eyes, she views everybody positively. Nobody is talentless and everybody is born gifted. You must believe in yourself and in that gift utilize it to its fullest, and it's exactly indicative of what Mocha is like. She's always valued herself tremendously and prioritizes her own happiness above all else, and managed to pursue her talents to enter a field that she adores. To sum up Mocha and Hanabi's major distinction in the finale, Mocha is alone in this path but not lonely, while Hanabi is isolated despite the fact that the people she cares for are around her. With all the characters we've explored throughout this video, none of them explore the possessive and manipulative kind of love as much as Sanae Ibato. While it may come off as similar to Akane's tendencies, this is far from the case. Akane's actions were derived from detachment, whereas Sanae's are because of her attachment to Hanabi. She serves the same role Akane serves for Mugi, being the inhibitor for Hanabi's growth. If Akane represented what Hanabi must avoid becoming, then I would label Sanae as everything Hanabi must overcome. She has to face Sanae's inability to move on from a one-sided love and attempt to acquire it by any means necessary, as this is something that Hanabi would never attempt and should never try to in the first place. As discussed previously, Hanabi's story is based on the journey of learning the essence of unrequited love through her experiences with Narumi and Mugi. And with this in mind, Sanae is utilized to constantly question that value in of itself by highlighting the repulsive side of one-sided romance. Some people just can't accept the fact that their feelings will never be reciprocated. It's quite interesting when inspecting both Mocha and Sanae's stories, as the two of them are in a similar role, yet are in perfect opposition. Sanae was simply content with watching Hanabi from afar, as she inhibited her feelings because she believed there was nothing wrong with it being unrequited. Hanabi had a boyfriend. It would be immoral to hope for anything more, right? But what if she actually wasn't in love with Mugi? Here, we're shown Sanae's similarity with Mocha, as the two of them were prepared to move on if they deemed their relationship to be genuine. But the ways they combat the realization that it wasn't couldn't be any different. It does seem as though that when Sanae brings all her feelings to the forefront, she is unable to stop, and this is quite obvious with how she ends up treating Hanabi. Just like many of the characters in the narrative, she is unable to forcefully convince herself to be something she isn't. She can't keep the status quo because her feelings are just that strong. Mocha was against being a homewrecker, but Sanae was willing to do whatever it takes to tarnish everything around Hanabi if it meant she could be with Hanabi completely. It's ironic. While Mocha initially is actively pursuing her feelings, she starts trying to convince herself that the memories she makes with Mugi are enough, whereas Sanae undergoes the opposite development. She started passively and then almost immediately became aggressive over Hanabi once she could no longer contain her feelings. And it's likely because she wants to control her own happiness and misery, which is similar to Akane. Both characters believe in control, likely out of fear of being hurt. That way, you can't expect the unexpected, thereby not being in pain in the process.
心を開いたふりをするの。開かなくてもいい。本当の心はずっと閉ざしてないと壊れちゃうよ。本当の気持ち知ってほしくなったら、自分のことは死ぬまで自分だけが知っていたらそれでいいじゃない。
Sanae is able to completely make Hanabi powerless against her advances, and it's because she is able to fully utilize Hanabi's flaws. For one, she's aware of just how much Hanabi cherishes her loved ones, and knows that Hanabi does not want to hurt them. So by proxy, if Sanae makes her feel as though Hanabi had been hurting her by neglecting her feelings, then how does Hanabi have any right to complain about what's happening to her? Plus, it isn't just trying to adhere to that, but it's also Hanabi wanting any way out of loneliness and pain, and so by letting Sanae do whatever she wants, it leads to Hanabi not wanting to be responsible for the situation, because that would be painful. In this fashion, you get a scenario where the two of them are at fault for how things came to be, and with how much of a mess it gets, Hanabi is powerless to go against Sanae's wishes. She doesn't want to hurt her best friend, while also deflecting all the blame to Sanae to protect herself. It's interesting, as Sanae has exactly what Mocha desires from Mugi, and it's what she uses against Hanabi. She knows what she's doing is absolutely irredeemable, but she can't stop. Not until she's acquired her own happiness. For as long as Sanae stays this way, Hanabi's beliefs will gradually be tarnished. Hanabi wants to be forgiven, but everything about her is being taken advantage of by Sanae. Both Akane and Sanae relish in Hanabi's despaired expressions, but their reasonings for doing so differ immensely. While Akane did so out of hatred and revenge for the fact that Hanabi had everything she never had, Sanae does it simply because she loves Hanabi so much and accepts every single aspect of her, whether it be the happy, saddened, or despaired versions of her. She simply wants everything from Hanabi. But Hanabi wants to grow and move on from her selfishness and taking advantage over others out of a need to protect herself. And it's why she tries announcing her relationship with Mugi to Sanae, but it doesn't work, because it is too late. Sanae is way too far gone and she made her this way, and so she must make up for it.
許してほしい。甘えてつけ込んで踏みにじって、挙句自分勝手な願いをあなたに押し付けたこの報いは当然だ。
Atsuya is an important asset to Sanae's characterization, as he is quite similar to her, but the distinctions lead Sanae to standing out more. He is just as desperate as she is to acquire his love in any shape or form. It is to the point where it doesn't matter if she were in a relationship. As long as he can be with her, it is all that matters. But what I find fascinating about him is that he is nowhere near as toxic or manipulative as Sanae, as he is much more open and frank about his feelings and desires. This is shown in how stubborn he is to not give up, even with how many times Sanae has shown no interest in him romantically. Like Sanae, he also understands the person he loves quite well. However, he does not use it against her to make advances on her. His chances with Sanae are not zero, so he will keep trying until he is able to be with her, but not utilizing scummy tactics. Throughout the narrative, most of these characters explore loneliness, whether it be Hanabi doing everything in her power to escape it, even if it meant hurting her cherished ones, or Mocha's story on how being alone does not equate to loneliness as discussed previously. But just like Akane, Sanae embraces loneliness in its entirety, and it is all a means to protect herself. Hanabi tries protecting herself from loneliness, while Sanae uses that loneliness to protect herself. The trip that Hanabi and Sanae go to explores all the flaws within their dynamic, as this entire outing stemmed from Sanae's desire to seduce Hanabi after heartbreak, essentially pouncing on the opportunity almost immediately to make Hanabi hers. And yet, she's aware that these feelings could never come to fruition. But how could she ever hope to have a meaningful connection if she's locked everything away?
どうして何がダメなの？他人に私の何がわかるの？ずっと誰にも見せなかった。知ってほしいとも思わなかった。恋をしてなお、私は孤独を選んだ。終わりくらい自分で決めて。何が悪いの
？Sanae does not close herself off for the same reasons as Akane. In fact, she does so because she cares so much for Hanabi. She is too terrified of that pain and rejection that may ensue, and it's likely why she ends up being so possessive over her. It is in complete opposition to Mocha, as she was okay with having minuscule memories with Mugi, while Sanae intends to create gigantic memories with Hanabi in the event that she's unable to win her over. In addition, while Mocha firmly believes in the concept of speciality, until she eventually realizes the futility of it all, if it means she could never attain true happiness if she were special, Sanae does not care and only prioritizes her own happiness. But that would insinuate that Sanae has no value, as she is willing to just be used by Hanabi as long as it meant being with her. And Atsuya highlights this when speaking to Hanabi. Both characters value their own happiness, but only one treasures themselves immensely. And that is why Sanae despises herself. If you truly hate yourself, then how will you feel if that in of itself is rejected?
本当の私なんてきっとろくでもない。あなたはきっと嫌いになる。そしたらどうやって立ち直ればいい？怖いのに。すごく怖いのに。どうして一人じゃ生きられないんだろう。
The relationship has gone so out of hand at this point, and if it is an entangled mess, it would be much easier to burn it entirely, especially with the pain it has brought forth for Sanae. Hanabi may have gotten rejected by Narumi, but she didn't cut ties with him, whereas with Sanae, she is too weak to sustain a relationship after everything they've been through, and it's why she tries cutting ties with Hanabi, as well as to make up for everything she's done. It isn't just Sanae, but also Hanabi who feels the same way. She knows that she shouldn't treat Sanae like anybody else. She is somebody special to her, and it's because of that that she may need to cut ties and let this be the last time. The two of them have done irreversible actions to each other, and perhaps the answer is to end it permanently. It may be the right thing to do, as a core factor in Sanae's story is trying to fathom the purpose of humans' actions in general. If being isolated is much easier to deal with, then why do we seek companionship? What is the purpose of seeking something that would be difficult to sustain? And what better way to showcase this other than have Hanabi, the most empathetic and emotionally understanding character in the series, showcase that even if this may not be the logical thing to do, she could never bring herself to do it. Even if it is difficult, Hanabi understands that this can't be the answer because her feelings say otherwise. While Sanae serves to be what Hanabi must overcome, I think Hanabi is the answer to many of Sanae's questions in the narrative. Here, it doesn't make sense because it can be viewed as cruel and selfish, as Hanabi is not accounting for Sanae's feelings and how painful it must be for her in this situation. It makes perfect sense that of all the characters who would be able to fix a mess like this and manage to be friends with Sanai again, would be none other than Hanabi. As seen in every character in the story, change takes time, and Hanabi is ready to wait until Sanai is finally able to open up to her and manage to understand the value of connections. It is through this encounter that Sanai tries giving connections a chance, as seen in her considering Asya as an option. She has never given this a thought before, so it is quite a huge deal for her to say this in the first place. Her epilogue does explore various elements of her character, especially her moving on from Hanabi and how she's handled her loneliness. Here, we can see that her interactions with Atsuya come off as heartfelt and genuine, rather than feel disassociated and uncaring as shown previously. Atsuya was willing to live with her, even if she was never going to return his feelings. He's aware that he is quite selfish and is likely why he is content with her having relationships while being with her. He's the closest person to her, yet is the most disconnected. Moreover, we show that she's been on good terms with Hanabi and are able to speak with each other like they've always been, perhaps even better than before. In this epilogue, Sanai's character explores what it means to actually be in love. It will take time to discover the answer, but she has all the time in the world to introspect on it. What I really like about this scene here is that many characters in other stories ponder what it means to be in love, but not many understand that that confusion in of itself may insinuate that those feelings may be love. It shows that perhaps Sanai is starting to understand those feelings gradually. I think what encompasses Sanai's character arc is when she is asked about the value of stories. To Sanai, people are solitary beings. They want to be isolated and consume stories because they want to accept that fact. But that can't be the case, because to be human is to have endless encounters in life, and it goes all the way back to Sanai's biggest question, and it's the purpose of companionship if it's as excruciating as it was for her with Hanabi. Humans make stories to share experiences, which in turn is a means of socialization with the world and showing what's in their imagination. Everybody yearns for a connection in some shape or form, and this epilogue shows this in its entirety with Sanai's relationship to Yuka, Atsuya, and Hanabi.